My name is Travis Perkins. I'm joined here with Kurt DeLamp, and you are joining us with our Protelo team with SuiteBilling today. And let's just get started. As I said, here we are. Here's the team. And then let's talk a little bit about Protelo real quick. If you're not already working with us or familiar with us, we have experts in every industry. Our goal is to help customers grow their business processes within NetSuite. We also help a lot of clients with integrations for outside third-party applications. We have a fully functional team and also a fully functional technical team. And we have been working together for many, many years at Protelo. We have a great group of people, and we are very interested in and on a daily basis just serving our NetSuite community, our clients, and just to ensure that we're monitoring and the progress and the success of either whether we're implementing or you're a services client, you were implemented prior to coming to Protelo. So we're just here strategically, for any future phases and for any efforts that we may be able to help you with. So if you haven't and you would like to reach out, my information is at the end of the slide deck, and we'll just go ahead and continue moving on. So if you're not already aware, as you're sitting there possibly eating some lunch, this is our Protelo webinar series for SuiteBilling. We'll cover these 1 through 8 items, and we're just going to get right into it with what is SuiteBilling. You may be familiar, and I'm going to describe it just from a personal perspective, that everybody here on the webinar probably has experience with having a home internet service, right? And you also might have a networking component with that, like a hardware component. So you are involved in a subscription service for that. You might be getting billed monthly or quarterly, maybe even annually. When you started that subscription services for that, you might have had a hardware component, and we'll talk about that. So what is SuiteBilling, right? It is, excuse me, it is just NetSuite is providing you, the customer operating in NetSuite, an opportunity to create reoccurring payments and invoicing solutions for your customers. And in the example that I just gave, there's a subscription service for my internet, and there's a hardware component that I'm paying for initially. I could, but I don't have to in my subscription model pay for that hardware component. I'm not leasing, I'm not renting for them, but I am the service, right? So NetSuite SuiteBilling offers that flexible framework for managing subscriptions. It supports creation of subscriptions with customizable billing options, like I was giving an example of that hardware component. But what we'll get into is some subscription models that are unique or could be unique and different from things that you might already know about SuiteBilling, or you might already be using SuiteBilling in the sense of billing your customers on a routine basis. So the other thing is that SuiteBilling, we often see with our clients that are using it, they're also using the advanced revenue recognition. It goes hand in hand with SuiteBilling, and oftentimes we see SuiteBilling and advanced revenue recognition as part of their licensing and management features for that. So let's get into it a little bit more in detail. So I'll start at a high level. SuiteBilling is an interesting subject because there's a lot of moving parts, and I'll work to describe the subscription plan, the subscription itself, and then I'll show you in NetSuite how those work on the sales order when you're originating that sales order with that subscription. Let's go ahead and continue with the complexities of reoccurring billing processes. So there are billing models in NetSuite. Let's start with number 1, what I just spoke about, right? So my internet services, it's reoccurring billing. For me, I pay quarterly. I'm the customer, right? I had a one-time charge for my hardware component, which was my router. So that would be a one-time charge. It also could be, I'm just using that as a tangible good example. You might have a one-time configuration or a setup fee in addition to that reoccurring billing component. The other part is like a usage base and really what usage-based is it's supporting, say, for instance, water, right? So you might use you might be billed on a reoccurring basis for a specific amount of water or a specific amount of bandwidth for your internet, and that might apply to more of a B2B scenario. But that is a usage-based billing, right? So I might bill at, say, my original subscription was at 1,000 terabytes of say storage space, and then anything beyond that would once that's exhausted, excuse me, would be the additional charges to that usage-based model. So it's a consumption type model. The commit plus is committed quantities that are at different rates for different schedules. So for example, if you're charging in advance for a specific number, and I just gave you an example of, say, it's like units, usage units per period. And so my units in my example were, say, gallons of water or terabytes of storage or some type of bandwidth usage, right? And so that's number four, that committed plus. And then there's also that committed plus, or that quantity and and charging at a different pace. So let me break that down a little bit because I stumbled over my words a little. On number five, the committed quantity that you could do in reoccurring billing that you initially charge for, and you may build that out to be reoccurring, well, you can then set it up to charge at a different pace depending on that model. And these can change. But number six can be a hybrid of any of these that are 1 through 5. So let's talk, and that's why I say here on this slide, it's a flexible, NetSuite offers these flexible billing models. And then what we want to do is let's just keep moving through the slide deck, because what I want to do is get over to NetSuite. So what I'm showing you here, and oftentimes I stage it with in our slide deck a screenshot just in case the demo account that we're using to show this information in, sometimes it can fail. So let's look at the anatomy of this record, but let's go into NetSuite to show it. One sec here, I'm going to switch over. All right. So that slide deck, that picture in that slide deck was for a subscription, but I'm going to start at a subscription plan at a high level, and then talk about how the subscription consumes the subscription plan, and then show the subscription on a sales order. So this subscription plan is the overarching model or record that a subscription is going to use. And this really sets the stage for example, when you have a department that is configuring business plans and subscription plans to go along with it for your customers, they set that model with a subscription plan so that, say, for instance, when I'm in the sales or ordering department, and I'm actually creating a sales order for a client, my position is not to be changing the plan. I'm going to be using the plan that was architected for those business scenarios. So when we solution that for the client, it's going to go on a sales order. So what I want to do is show you that at the top here, and actually I'll put this in edit mode. And when I'm doing this, I just want to talk about this structure, right? So here's the name. Some of these are very obvious, but I'll call them out. This initial term for this plan is a 1 year, and the subsidiary are just those classifications to NetSuite. You might be multi-company, you might have multiple departments, and you might have different types of classes that you're using that ultimately end up on your financial reporting when you're doing your dicing and slicing on a daily basis with your financial reporting, and you're looking at subscriptions and their plans and how they're utilized, right? Where's your revenue coming from? This down below, I am on related records, and we're going to show this sales order down here in just a minute, but let's go over to the line sub-tab. So these lines on this plan, remember, and I'll say this a few times just to and repeat myself, but the plan is the first portion of setting up subscriptions. It's the model that will be followed and selected in a subscription that subscription is going to be used and sold to a customer. So we're starting at the plan level, at the top level. And on this level, I've decided that I would like to have this one-time upfront cost. And in my previous examples, that was referring to it like a tangible good, a router in my case, right? And then my reoccurring adjustable, which is this second line. And that's where I'm going to see that reoccurring billing. In my example, I said quarterly. And then there's going to be a price book associated with it. You can have multiple books associated to a subscription. In this case, that price book is what controls the pricing for your customers in that subscription model. And then the renewal model or the renewal options for this plan. In this case, I've chosen or have selected, and as you can see, I can hit this plus sign for those of you who are familiar with NetSuite to make other renewable terms. In this case, it's one, and I'm choosing that it's an automatically initiates a renewal process 30 days before the subscription end date. So there's a lot of demographic information here that you're initially setting up for the plan. Now, if you have any uplifts, and we'll show you an example here in just a little bit, and Kurt will talk about some of these as well. But the uplift opportunity might be, for example, over time, we may see that the uplift increases that renewal by a certain percentage of that subscription. So in my example, I might owe $100 per quarter, but over time it's 110. And then the next time it's 120. It might look like this model every 3 months that it continues to increase. The accounting subtab, again, just going over these, you're probably familiar with this because you see this on when you set up item records. That income account is what's going to have the GL impact when this subscription plan is involved in a subscription on a sales order. Once that is fulfilled and invoiced, that the income is going to come into that 4,000 revenue account from my chart of accounts. And just a quick side note, right? In NetSuite, the item record is typically what's associated with GL impact. So anytime there's movement on that, there's GL impact in the system. That's an aside from creating just a journal entry where that's immediately GL impacting or expense lines on invoices or billing, from a revenue perspective. So anyway, so here's your subscription plan. Let me not get too caught up in the weeds here. I just wanted to show a few subtabs and how it's related to setting up that plan. What I want to do is go over to the subscriptions that is associated to the subscription plan, which I have here, and I'm going to move this record over actually to the right of it, so we're reading left to right. So you can see, and I'll put this in edit mode as well, this subscription involves this specific subscription plan, that one-time reoccurring plan down here where my mouse is moving under plan and term. There's a lot of information here in its architecture. On start, when the subscription starts, when it ends, what the next renewal date is, and I'm down here kind of in the middle as I'm talking, and then again, some of these dates, by the way, the data in this demo account might have some odd dates, but the gist is when does the subscription start? When does it end? Is there a renewal? And then here you can see there's a billing schedule. It's first of the month. You can configure that to be what you need. This billing frequency is monthly. This information is coming in from the subscription plan itself. So when I create a new subscription associated to a customer, I have some autonomy to change some of that information, but for the most part, I can make it rigid so it can't be changed. It can't change. And the customer's not going to allow or be allowed to have it change. Or it can be a fairly flexible model so that you have the autonomy to work with the customer, or vice versa. The customer has the autonomy to work with you and what that subscription can or can't do once it's been sold and it is active. Okay. Down here, you see similar on the subscription record, the lines, right, that come in. We talked about those coming in from the plan. Here's the pricing model. And I just want to point out a few of these columns here, right? Price, 1,200. It's monthly, and you can see that it increases over time. And when you look at this record for the amount of time that it has a start between its start and its end date, what the pricing is going to be. And then again, we talked about the uplift, which we have here. In my example that I used, where it was increasing $10 every 3 months, here is where that would occur, right? You have a reoccurring uplift. It's adjustable at 1%. In this case, it's monthly, and then it repeats every 3 months, and we'll show that here in just a few minutes. Related records in NetSuite means what records are involved in this particular transaction, right? So when you look at a sales order transaction and you look under the related records subtab, you're going to see that those downstream records, which are fulfillment records, invoicing, and payment records. For the related records of a subscription, these are, once the subscription is active, NetSuite creates those reoccurring invoices for the customer. So that's a list of all of these. And you can see here the 1% uplift over time. So 7/1, if you count through the months at 900, 8, 9, 10, it moves to 909, 11, 12, 1 into the next year, it moves to 918. So I just wanted to point out some of those options that you have there. Let's go back to the slide deck for a few minutes, and because I do tend to get carried away, and I want to make sure that I don't go too far ahead. So I want to talk about the managing the entire subscription and the life cycle. Okay. So this subscription lifecycle management in NetSuite for these records that I just showed you, it allows you to create a plan template with multiple price books per plan that I discussed earlier. I also mentioned that we do have clients that, use advanced revenue management, just a typical synonymous, I can't even speak here, synonymously goes with the SuiteBilling. So you'll see that a lot. You might not have the need for advanced revenue management, but it is an option, and it goes nicely. It complements the model of SuiteBilling. And then also the supporting and the compliance of ASC 606 or the IFRS 15 standards. So if you're already familiar with contracts, NetSuite is saying that they support these compliance initiatives, and that's how the management and the life cycle of the subscription is set up in NetSuite. So if you identify with these compliance needs, NetSuite handles that nicely. So let's continue moving on. Let's see here. So again, I've got a slide that is representing that subscription plan, and then we talked about some of the sub menu items that were price book, lines, renewals, uplift, and accounting. And then over here, if you decide to revisit this webinar, you'll have the slide deck, and you can see here what we talked about. Let me see if I'm forgetting anything. So with the subscription plan template, I did go over, and I'll go over again, items such as the reoccurring service, the usage, the commit plus, those are all part of the plan, the pricing and the renewal behavior, just recounting, and then the billing account. That billing account, by the way, that you associate with your subscriptions, you can have multiples of those set. So depending on the subscription that you have, you may have multiples per customer. You can set multiple billing accounts and track, right, that revenue that comes into those accounts as your subscriptions work for you over time, and as you bill for those over time. And then I also mentioned just the rigidity and the flexibility that you can set up. One thing about setting up a rigid plan that I wanted to identify with is that, say for instance, you have a tangible good item and a service item in those examples that I was using. You can make it so that that subscription, that when it's selected from a sales perspective, it will be rigid in this regard. The service and the tangible good item will always be participating as a rigid behavior of that subscription. So they'll always be there. The person who's creating the sales order cannot remove them when they're selecting that subscription. So that's a less or a more restrictive model. However, on the sales order itself, and I did tell you earlier that I was going to show that, and um, have saved that to this point. So on this sales order, not only can you add the subscription lines to the sales order, you can add additional subscriptions or additional lines that might not be connected to a subscription in this sales order. So when you do set it up, in this sales order, I just am saying for B1 customer, I am configuring that B1 subscription. So if I were to come down here and I add a row just so that you can see here, you may be used to adding items on a sales order record, right? But here you also have the ability to add a subscription. And when you add the subscription, it brings in all of the information for that subscription at the line level. And then you can decide in this case what is changeable or what is not changeable on this. And then this one isn't active, so it's not going to allow me to change any of the quantities or discounted rates or anything. But I can choose when this actually starts, and if I backdated it and save the record, you would see similar here on these lines that are the same thing that you saw in the subscription, the way that you configured it, right? And if there are discounts, it shows you that, shows you the total amount and the amount per period, and then that one time cost, and then the monthly cost for the customer. All right, let's keep going. What I'd like to bring up is when I was talking about managing the life cycle of the subscription, something to point out about that is the modifications that you can do once that subscription is active and it is in play. You have the ability through the change order process in managing subscriptions to activate. I won't read all these, but you have these opportunities to activate, suspend, reactivate these records, and that is under the Actions tab on a subscription record. So you may have in your organization on certain subscriptions allowing a customer or a client to suspend or reactivate, renew, or terminate those subscriptions. You can also put in a change order because you now have decided that the climate is changing and you would like to put an uplift in that subscription so that going forward, maybe on renewal, that automatically sets for the client and that at 1% monthly reoccurring fee is occurs to be a 1% uplift over that three month period. So just something to identify with when you're going through the activation process and then managing those subscriptions and the life cycle of those subscriptions. So, one thing too that I want to rattle off here is that you can future date, front date, back date those subscriptions. You may have a client that you want to set dates specifically for their usage, and you can do that with your subscription models. When you activate them, once you enter into the subscription and it starts, that subscription actually natively is in a pending activation status. So it has to be activated. It cannot be used until it's activated. So those who are, in the back office managing subscriptions and you're building out those models, you can save them, but it doesn't mean that they have to be utilized right away. And NetSuite does a nice job of controlling that by setting them to pending activation. You can also temporarily pause a subscription and you can reactivate it later. And then on the renewals, you can extend a subscription at the end of its term. Your renewal can be automatic, like what we showed in the very beginning. So just keeping on, we'll talk about just the multiple charges to a single invoice and how we can utilize subscriptions in invoicing your customers. Now, if you're not already aware, you can continue to use the invoicing process that you may be already familiar with in NetSuite by mass billing your customers. And when I say that, I'm not talking about mass billing from a subscription standpoint, but just you have a lot of invoices. You're not going to go into each customer record, find a transaction, and then invoice that individually. Now, I should say you're not going to with a grain of salt here because you may be low volume, high revenue and maybe your processes warrant you doing that per customer, or you might be high volume and you don't want to touch every record, so you can just mass invoice. Well, NetSuite has the same billing operations, and let's go back into NetSuite and show a little bit of that. This particular area in NetSuite, the billing operations page, I'm just navigating from the transactions menu in this account. I'm logged in as administrator, and you can see that there's a subscription menu here, and then there's a billing process, billing operations, and that screen I already have up. I won't wait for it to load, and that's this billing operations screen. Excuse me. And when you run billing operations, there's a couple things to it, right? When you're going to do a bill run, and actually this is one that my screen's frozen. Just give it a second. So I'll keep talking and this will clear up. So when you do a bill run, it's going to go grab all of those subscriptions out there that are due. Now, each subscription, again, depending on how you have created your subscription process and your active subscriptions, they've been activated, then your reoccurring billing occurs in NetSuite. Those invoices are going to go out when you do your billing operations for those subscriptions. All right, so it looks like it is no longer frozen. And when you do a billing operations run, you can do a couple things I want to point out. Your bill run is going to create your invoices, and they're going to, if you choose to, they'll all go out at the time that you would like them to when you perform your billing run out to your clients. So what I would expect in this situation is for your invoice to be created and then your customer notified of that reoccurring, just like I receive it for my internet service at my home. I'm going to receive that reoccurring invoice that I need to pay at that quarterly mark. When you do billing operations, it'll come up with all of those records in this page. And that's the bill run here that you see on the right-hand side where my cursor is moving around. One thing I want to point out to you, just moving away from that for a minute, is a rating run. And a rating process in NetSuite with SuiteBilling is when you have your subscription set up and configured, but you may have changed some of those, so they're going to have a different GL impact once you invoice and those customers are paying those invoices. You would like to know and update your information from a financial standpoint. Each of those records, excuse me, those subscription records show how you have configured such a subscription billing, how much is owed on its term basis, so monthly, quarterly, however that's set up, and it shows you how much you're going to bring in per subscription. Well, you may have modified those subscriptions, so over here you can do a rating run. And the rating run is going to take into account how you have your subscription configured, right? So your pricing options, your renewal options, and your billing frequency. And when you do a rating run, it'll update all that information in the system so you financially are reporting on that more accurately. If you don't do that, then you don't immediately know, and you don't have to, but I just want you to know that you have the ability to do the rating run and a bill run from the billing operations page. So the rating process, I want to describe a little bit more in detail, right? So that's where, you know, the rating process, explaining this, excuse me, I'm tripping over my words here for a second, is when you, let's go back to that. It creates charges based on a plan. So I'm describing more in depth about the rating process. So it's creating charges based on a plan, that price book that's associated with it, with that we looked at, and then the line types, which is like usage, reoccurring, or one-time billing. And then paired with the effective date of the subscription, that effective date is when that effective subscription is starting, right? And then it calculates the value over its life cycle, and it gives you that information in NetSuite to do that. That rating run will calculate charges according to the definitions on the subscription, all right? And that's on active subscriptions. So if we go back in here and we look at this, here's an invoice. And actually, I wonder if I can blow this up a little bit so it looks a little bit better here. On this invoice in NetSuite, this is generated as a result of that billing operations run. And so here you have, for the Bluegrass software customer, the billing account that you specified on the subscription. You see your start and end dates, and then as of date 9/1/2023, and then your subscriptions down here at the line level. So all of this is detailed out, and you can choose what you want from a customer facing document when that gets emailed out as a PDF from NetSuite to all your clients who are using your subscription. This information for the invoice will go out on that advanced PDF form, and then you can configure that to have more or less information depending on your processes. All right, I got to shrink this down to continue going on. Whoa, hold on. Let's go back here. All right. Customer billing groups. So if you put in some more on the process billing, when you have billing groups, you can have specific customers in billing groups, and when you run a billing process, you can consolidate those charges to an invoice per customer, and you can run your billing groups based on a group of customers. So there's a lot of demographic information that you can use in NetSuite to group things together and pull multiple customers in based on billing accounts when you do your billing operations. So NetSuite, again, gives you a lot of options to control your subscription processes in that regard. Let's see here. Let's continue. So I introduced Kurt in the beginning, and I've been doing most of the talking. Let's give Kurt the opportunity here to continue on with the multiple pricing models.
Thanks, Travis. We'll let you catch your voice back again. How about that?
Thank you. Yeah.
Everything as Travis has led to this point, it's flexible, right? And that includes down in pricing, right? So if you look at a subscription and you look at the structure, you can define multiple price books, but you can also define behavior within the price book as well. And some of these terms, they're a little bit esoteric, but the whole point is that you can define the rate that you charge per unit of sale within the price book. One model is flat rate, right? Let's use an example of, let's say you charge a customer for 500 gigs of data storage, right? And you want to charge $10 per gig, then that flat rate would be $500 times 10, right? You can also define tiered pricing. Let's say that you want to charge a customer $10 for 250 gigs of storage, up to 250 gigs of storage. Then beyond 250 to 500 gigs, you want to charge $11. It will figure out the first rate at 250 times 10, and then the second rate 250 times 11. So if you hit that tier, it'll add in or calculate the rate based on that next level tier. Now, volume pricing is pricing that is inclusive of quantity, right? So let's say that you define the same levels of tier pricing, 200, 0 to 250, 251 to 500. But if you hit 251, the entire quantity will be charged at $11. So like Travis said, it's in subscriptions, entirely flexible in how you want to price it and lay it all out. I'd also like to point out something that maybe we missed in the scheduled billing operations. The process billing operations can be scheduled as well. You can
Yes.
define a frequency, you can define customer groups that you want to use on whatever schedule you want in order to automate that process. So I just wanted to point that out. We didn't have that on the slide.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. And I did skip that. And we talked earlier that I wanted to show that. So in your billing operations, you have the ability to process this manually, as Kurt is bringing up, or schedule your operations. So again, giving you some flexibility, you might be able to offload and schedule your billing so that it doesn't require so much effort from a manual perspective. So that's a very good point, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, when you're talking about the process billing operations, as you add more subscriptions, the more frequent that you make charges, the exponential number of charges and invoices you're going to have to generate are going to increase, obviously, exponentially. So those numbers get a lot easier to manage if you do it in a billing operation, set at what frequency, whether you bill weekly, whether you bill monthly, that sort of thing. It's going to be a lot more, it's going to be a lot easier to manage as those charges increase.
Yeah, and you might already be familiar like this. You don't have to have Suite Billing to have this billing operations screen in NetSuite, but it is available. It depends on your licensing, but you might already be familiar with it because you might have it in your system. And these were when we talked earlier, that here's your bill run and your rating run that I was showing. I didn't have it in edit mode. So, okay, um, let's continue on. Kurt, are you ready to keep moving?
Sure. You want to bring up reports?
Yeah.
You can generate, there are out-of-the-box reports that are customizable and available if you want to move to the next slide. They
Yeah.
do include some things like monthly recurring revenue. It just lays out the recurring revenue by customer, pivoted across the period. You can show total contract value. If you were to look at a subscription, you would actually see that total contract value at the top, and then spread out across a period. That would be your pending contract value if it hasn't activated, but that is a report you can use. Billings to date is your history, right? It shows what you've done per customer up until the date and time that you set on the report. Churn by customer is a rate, and it tracks your drops, your gains, new customers you drop, subscriptions ending, subscriptions activating, and it generates a churn rate and also churn by revenue as well. Again, same thing as churn by customer. It just puts a revenue aspect on it as well. There is also included with SuiteBilling an analytics workbook. It's very powerful. It's very flexible. Definitely check that out as well. It can allow you to pivot and include more data that maybe the standard out of the box reports don't have or just don't display properly. But as if you have experience with Suite Analytics, it can just it's a definite tool that you want to check out as well.
Before we move on, I want to just capitalize on some of the things that Kurt was talking about. So if I'll say it this way, we do have clients and we know ourselves, right? You get into your daily processes. Every day you are working in a functional area in NetSuite and you might not recognize something that's right in front of you. Analytics here in this system is the menu item that will take you to the analytics section of NetSuite. Most every account should have an analytics menu here at the top. If you don't, I'm just bringing it to your awareness so that if you either need to talk with one of us at Protelo about getting that menu exposed, or you have a person who administers NetSuite for you, have them expose that. There's a lot of power and utility within analytics that you can utilize, not just for SuiteBilling, but for other areas of NetSuite. If you're already familiar with Save Searches or the Report Builder, analytics is in addition to that. Also, something that Kurt's going to talk about here in a few minutes. Actually, before I go to that part, let's go to reports. And then it looks like in this system, there's two analytics menus. That's kind of funny. But up here under subscriptions are the native reporting capabilities. So once you implement SuiteBilling or in the process of getting your customers up and running on subscription services, you don't have to spend really any time building out reports. NetSuite gives you these native reports that you can use as a jumping off point and configure them the way that you want to. So these are areas in NetSuite that you won't have unless you have subscription billing or SuiteBilling. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. That slide deck that slide that Kurt was referring to would take you to these specific reports. Okay. Flip back to our slide deck, and we've got some new features here that Kurt can continue to discuss.
Yeah, we're getting there. So let's talk about new features. Obviously, NetSuite's big on improving what it has, including new functionality. There are Suite apps available, and Travis will show you in the background the Suite app marketplace. They are available to subscribers to SuiteBilling. These are functionalities or Suite apps or bundles that are available in order to expand the functionality of SuiteBilling. The first one that was on the list is called Enhanced UI. It offers kind of a different look, some shortcut fields, pluses and minuses to open up menus. It just gives a different user interface look and feel to the subscription page. And it also opens up what's called time-based pricing. In fact, the Suite app used to be called the time-based pricing Suite app. That's where you can create intervals for price, quantity, or discount changes over time. It also will allow you to define decimal precision out to 8 places. It also can enable you, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, provide flat rate discounts instead of just a percentage discount. So that's one Suite app that is available. Another more recent development is a Suite app called Fulfillable Items with SuiteBilling. What that does is it allows you, and if you've ever worked in suite billing within NetSuite, one gap has always been being able to link a tangible item or a fulfillable item to a subscription. Um, and that's been a shortcut, and they're trying to address it with this app called Fulfillable Items for Suite apps, so or for SuiteBilling. This Suite app allows you to link fulfillable items, like in Travis' example, a modem, right? You have them in stock. They have a serial number. They have some descriptors. It's color blue. It's model X, Y, Z. You can link that fulfillable item to the subscription, and on the sales order that gets generated, it creates a separate line for that fulfillable items and allows you to ship it to show that revenue at point of shipment, but then it also keeps the subscription lines on the sales order as well. So it's just additional functionality. It allows you to look up the subscription and say that, hey, this subscription to Joe Schmo is for the next year. We shipped this modem, serial number 1234, and it just adds a layer of functionality and trackability within the subscription. It also provides for updating as if you have to generate a return against that fulfillable item. It will also update the subscription that it's linked to as well.
Kurt, did I land on the right slide? You want me to go back one?
No, that's great. Considerations. There are some considerations to consider when we talk about the fulfillable items with fulfillable items suite app. Sales orders can't be split unless the order is in a pending approval status. So if you don't use an approval process for your sales order, you have to implement that in order to use the fulfillable items suite app. And then if the quantity of the subscription items is 50 or more, the Suite app, you save it, the Suite app picks up a MapReduce script that will take over. So you have to monitor the progress of that. That's just in case the quantity is 50 or more. Another consideration would be that for service line items on a subscription, you can't define a unit of measure. Just something to keep in mind. Let's say that you do, want to define a unit of measure, hours, minutes, units, pounds, quantity, anything like that. It doesn't support that as well. And the other suggestion again is probably best to use the process billing operations page. You can invoice from the customer, or you can invoice from the invoice billable customers page using the standard functionality that comes with it with some configuration. But the process billing operations page is really kind of where you're bread is buttered, so to speak. It just allows a little bit more of a catch-all phrase. So again, that would just be a recommendation. That's not to say you can't do it, but it's just something to consider.
I do see a question out there. Okay, let's read it. What is suite billing and how does it differ from standard NetSuite billing? Okay, so you might have come in later in our webinar, and that's a good question because NetSuite just standard billing does not offer almost any of what I covered in terms of a subscription plan, pricing options, the flexibility to change those options in terms of what was it, like uplifts, the ability to suspend and change and modify that over time because the billing is reoccurring billing. Once suite billing is enabled and you set it up, the customer now has engaged with you on a subscription services that you're offering. And then there is routine billing because of that subscription. In our example that we went through was monthly reoccurring. And that's monthly reoccurring revenue to you that you don't have to go and create a bill each time for that, right? NetSuite does that for you, and you're controlling the process through your billing operations page. So when your monthly billing, when you decide to do your monthly billing, you can execute on that, and then all your clients receive those invoices. The next month, the same thing, wash, rinse, repeat process happens. And in your reoccurring billing process for NetSuite suite billing, you continue to grow that with your clients. If you don't have that, you would manually have to go create a bill for each customer for each time that you would like to bill them in a pseudo scenario of calling it subscription billing. But I mean, you could do it manually. It could be a nightmare. So that is a difference. Um, okay, let's see here. I'm just checking to see other questions. Okay. Yep. So here's another one, right? Does suite billing support both one-time and reoccurring billing? That's correct. Earlier, I talked about like hybrid scenarios where you can set up your subscription services to handle that one-time billing. That one-time billing could be, say, I don't know, my furnace or my home HVAC system uh, routinely, I could sign up for subscription services that they come and check and clean it every 3 months. But before they do that, there might be an initial consultation fee that they're going to charge me. That's a one time to get on that subscription plan. And you can commingle those in your subscription plan to do that. So, yeah, does Suite Billing support both one time and reoccurring? The answer is yes. And I'm just looking out here. Kurt, if you see an answer here or a question that I'm missing, just
There was a
say
question
so.
earlier in chat from Robert. It said, I use the Dunning module for billing and collection notices.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. That can be used with subscriptions as well because you are really creating an AR entry, right? You're creating an invoice. So it's going to hit your customer's balance. So if you're using the native Dunning module or collection notices within NetSuite, it will dovetail in with anything that gets generated as part of Suite Billing as well.
Yeah, that's good. Um, there was a question about rating models. Okay, yep, I covered that earlier. Thank you for asking that. And then here's a question that's come in. Can you automate renewal of subscriptions? Yes, you can. And on that page I showed you earlier on the subscription, there is the ability to set up that plan so that you are or your customers NetSuite you're causing to generate that automatic renewal process. And if you want to have more control over that, you don't have to set it up that way. You have an option to select otherwise. So here's your renewal on this subscription plan. And down here, I had clicked, and then I'm sharing my screen still. Automatically initiate renewal process. You don't have to select that checkbox, but when it is selected, you have the option of when and how many days that would occur. So let's see here. I'm going to say 5 tab. And then if this is set and you've used this on a subscription, then the automatic initiation of the renewal process will occur. So that's a great question. Again, there's a lot of flexibility in the suite billing module that gives you either, like I said, very rigid or a lot of autonomy to work within the system and work with your customers. And that's one of the nice things of several. It's certainly nice that it doesn't put you in a corner to where you're not able to get out of it. And what I mean by saying that is being able to manage that subscription. And I showed earlier the actions under here. Actually, I have to cancel this out of edit mode to show those actions, but to manage and maintain it over its life cycle. Okay, so I think what we are doing is drawing to an end. And let's go back to the slide deck so that you're aware of some contact information that we have. So if you want to learn more about SuiteBilling or anything else regarding NetSuite, please reach out to me. Rachel's done a nice job on our team creating this slide deck and putting this QR code on there, which I think is fantastic. So all this beautification is a result of Rachel's effort. You can reach out to me directly via my phone number or my contact information, my email. So I really appreciate you joining us today, Kurt and I, as we presented this webinar series for SuiteBilling. We have a lot of upcoming activity in this year, still a lot of year left, both in our newsletter, our website, and our upcoming webinars, and even our podcast. So if you would pay attention to those, subscribe, when you have an opportunity, and we're here to help you and to support your efforts with NetSuite. So thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. Take care, everybody.